Hello everyone! In this video I will continue Python for Beginners series. In this video we will talk about loops in Python and specifically about while and for. If you have not seen previous videos from this series, you can check them all collected in the list. Link you can find in the right up corner. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you didn't do it yet, and leave your comment to let me know whether it was useful or if you still have some questions about the topic. So let's talk about loop. What is loops? Loops is the statement that repeat an action over and over. So for example, every morning you brush your teeth, so you're looping this action every time. So you brushing your teeth every morning over and over again. So in Python, as I told, there is the while and for loops. So while statements provide a way to code general loops, and for statements is designed to stepping through the items in a sequence or other iterable object and running a block of code for each. I will talk more specifically about each of them with an examples. So let's start with while. In simple terms, while repeatedly executes a block of statements as long as it's true. It is called a loop because control keeps looping back to start of the statements until it falls. So, for example, let's create a simple loop using while. To do that, we just I'm showing all of the examples in PyCharm Community Edition. So to do that, we just need to write a while statement, then condition. So for us, our condition would be always true, so we will set it true. So then we need to write the semicolons. Then in the next block with the indentation, you need to write what the code needs to do if the condition is true. And for example, what we want to do is just to print that it's true. Now if we will run it, we will see that we created a loop that will run forever, as we specifically set true next to the while. Let's run and check it. So you see it's running, and this will never stop until I'll kill program and interrupt the execution of the code. So I will just do that. So this sort of behavior is usually called an infinity loop. So probably you will not write programs like that in the future. So better to write a loops with the option that they will stop in some case. So eventually they has to stop. So for example, let me write some better program. So just a small program, and we will with this program we will slicing off the first character of a string until string is empty. So for example, we will just use string, and we want the user to input this string, and we will just write please enter a word, and then we will write our loop while x. You can do it like that. So while x, meanwhile there will be some characters in this string. So if the strings will have some characters, x would be true. If the string will be empty, x would be false. So if we will have some characters, we will print this character, our x, and we will just use end equal to empty space. So why we need this end? So we will print all of the results in one line. Then we will just slice and reassign our x and slice it. So we will slice the first character just like that. If you're not sure and don't know how to do the slicing and everything work with the strings, you can check a video about strings. There everything explained there very well. So let's run and check what we have. So we will enter the word, and for example we will enter explain, and you see we just printed explain, then we printed explain because we sliced through our e, then plain, lane, in, n, until our string is empty, and then our loop stopped. So you see that the process is finished. So it's not the infinity loop anymore because it has an option where where it should stop. So we can run this loop with the debugger just to see how it's working. So for example, we would write test. So you see now that our X is test. So if we will step into our code, you will see that it's printed test, and then we will do the slicing, and then you see that we returning back to our loop from the beginning. And now our X is changed and it's EST. And we do the same until our X, now it's T, and then next time our X is empty string, so X is false, and then our loop stopped. So we don't go to the print anymore because our condition is false. So as you see, the loop stops when condition is false. So as you remember from previous video about if statements, it will be false if the string is empty. So for this small script, we just wrote the loop with the possibility to stop. So when the string will be empty, it will stop. If you're not familiar with if statements yet, you can find a link to a video in the upper right corner, and I would recommend to check it before this one. It would help you to understand this material better as well. So you can also add an else statement, an else condition to the loop. So let's modify our example and we'll add the else condition. So we will just write else, and then we will print all done. So what this L condition done? So when our X will be empty and it will be false, our loop will go to the else condition, and we will print that all is done. So let me run it with the debugger and see how it works. So we will enter our test again. So now you see our X is test, and we will go through the through our loop, and it's EST again, and etc. And let me just remove it, and we will see. And we are here now when everything is printed and our X is false, and then in the result we have printed that all is done. So you see we printed test, EST, ST, T, and all done. So this is how else statement works in the loop. So let's review two simple statements, break and continue in the loop. They have a purpose just when nested inside loops. The continue statement causes an immediate jump to the top of the loop. It also sometimes lets you to avoid statement nesting. So let's create some example for it. I will just create a different example. So I will just make a small loop that will skip odd numbers. So for example, we will want user to input a number. So we will write input a number, and then we will write our loop while X. So it's not a 0. So when it will be 0, it would be false. If it's not a 0, it's true. So we will write X equal X minus 1, and then we will check if X So it means if the remaining of the division from X to 2 would be 0, then it means that we want to continue. If not, we will print the odd number. So we created the loop that will print all of the odd numbers and will skip even numbers. So let me just run and show it. So for example, we would enter 10, and we will see that 9, 7, 5, 3, 1 is printed, and 2, 4, 6 that is even is not printed. So we have just the odd numbers printed. So how does it work? Let's check check with the debugger. And when we reach to 0, our loop stop. So let's check it with the debugger, and we will just use simple like 4, for example, so it would be faster. So we have our integer 4, then we will change our x, and now it's 3, and we see whether 3, if it's divide to 2 with no division, we will go to continue. If not, we will print it. So we want to print our odd number. So in our case, this will give us false. So we will go here. When the condition will give us true, for example, now 2 divided to 2 would be 0, we will go to continue, and then we will go back to our loop. So we will not print anything, we will just go back to our loop. So this is how it will work. And in the result we will have printed just the odd number. So the point of the continue, that it's do immediate jump to the top of the loop. Now let's review break statement. The break statement causes an immediate exit from the loop. So let me create different example. We will write our loop like that. While true, then we want the user to write the name. So input, and we will write enter a name, and we need it to be a string, just like that. And then we will write the condition if name equals to stop. So if user will write stop, then we will stop our loop. Else, we will ask him to write an age, for example, and we need the integer for that. Enter age, and we will just print name and age, just like that. So just like that. So we have while true, name, enter name. If name would be stop, we want to stop the loop. So let me just run it. So let's enter the name that is not stop. For example, Arthur. Enter age 4. So Arthur 4. Then let's enter stop. And when we enter stop, our process is finished. So we reached the break. So let me run it with the debugger just to lead you through the code. So we have first the input. Now we need to input the name. So we will write Arthur again. And we see if the name is stop. No, because it's Arthur. Then we will go to the age. And we need to enter the age, would be 2. And then we will reach to the print. But next case, let me write stop. So if name is stop and it's true, then we will go to the break, and then we will immediately stop our loop. So it's not like continue will go up to the beginning of the loop, it would stop the loop entirely. So the difference between break and continue is that continue will go on top of the loop and break will stop the loop. Except these two, there is also a pass statement. The pass statement is no operation placeholder that is used when syntax required a statement, but you have nothing useful to say. So let me demonstrate it with an example and it would be more clear. So for example, we have our count equal to 0, and then we will write while count less than 10. So we want to run the loop until count is equal to 10. So semicolons, and then our condition, we want to count equal plus 1. If count to 2 equal to 0, the same that we did before, we will pass. So the if statement inside the loops checks if count is even or odd. If count is even, the pass statement is executed and the loop continues without doing anything. If count is odd, the else block is executed. Then we will write now else print count. So it's the similar that we did before. We want to print all of the odd numbers. So let's run. I made a mistake here. Plus equal. And let's run it now. So you see, we just printed the odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So if we will go through the debugger now and check it again how the code is moving. So we have our count 0 and now it's 1 because we just added 1. And 1 divided to 2 would give us false. So we will go to the else block and we will print it. Then we will have the count now is 2. And 2 divided to 2 would be equal to 0 and it would be true. And we don't want our code to do anything, so we will just pass. So this is all about the while statements. I hope you got the idea behind that. You just need to practice and you will totally get it. Now let's talk about another type of loops in Python, for loop. The for loop is a generic iterator in Python. It can step through the items in any ordered sequence or other iterable object. The for statement works on strings, lists, tuples, and other built-in iterable, as well as new user-defined objects. The Python for loops begins with a header line that specifies an assignment target along with the object you want to step through. When Python runs a for loop, it assigns the items in the iterable object to the target one by one and executes the loop body for each. So sounds complicated, but it's not. Let me just show it in the example. So let's create some iterable that we would like to go through using a for loop. For us, it would be, for example, list. So we will create colors. We will create a list that will contain some colors. So for example, red, green, yellow, and blue, for example. So now let's create a simple loop just to print all of these elements in the list one by one. To do that, we just need to write for I in colors. So I is our target, colors is the objects that we want to iterate through. Print I. So to create a loop, we are using for, then a target. Usually for that, we are using I. But to be clear, here we can change this I to anything we want. So for example, we would write color. So we want to go through each color in our colors. And we want to print each color one by one. So let me just run. And you see, we just printed red, green, yellow, blue. So let's run it with our debugger and we'll see how it's working. So the first we have for color in colors. So now our color is red, this first one, as you see. And then we print it. After that, we go back and check what our color now. If we will step, we will see that our color now is green. And we will do that until we have an element in our iterable object in our list. When we don't have any more elements here, our loop will stop and everything is printed. So you see now how the Python runs this for loop. It assigns the items in iterable object to a target, our color, one by one. In our case, it assigned to color, one color at a time from our list colors. The for statement also supports else block, as we saw with the while earlier. So let's just modify this example a little bit. So we will just add if statements as well here. So for example, we want to check if the color is white, then we will print that white is found, and we will stop our using break. We will stop our loop. The purpose of our loop now to find the white. If there is no white, we will write that white is not found. So you see that this else statement is for the loop, not for the if condition. So what we will do, we will go through each color one by one and check whether it's white. If it's white, we will stop the our loop, and we will write that we found the white. If there is no white, and there is no white in our example, then we will go to all of the colors, check that they are not white, and then we will go to the else statement and print that white is not found. Let me run it with the debugger and you will see. So we have red. Red is not white. So this means that we go to our break, and we trying that we not go to our print and break, because this is false, and we trying our loop again. So then we check whether green is white. Green is not white. We go again. We checking whether yellow is white. Yellow is not white. We checking again whether blue is white, and blue is not white. So we checked all of them, and there is no white. So that is why we go to the else statement and print that there is no white. So let's just change blue to white and see how it will work now. So we have green is not white, yellow is not white, and now we have white, and white is white. So that is why we go to our print statement. We print that white is found, and we hit the break, and we stop our loop just like that. And in the result, we have whether white is found. So in this example, we check both else statement and also break for the for loop, because with the break, you're already familiar. For loops is working not just for list, of course, but for the other data types that is iterable too. Let me just review some examples with the strings, with the tuples, and with the dictionary. So the first one with strings. We will just write for I in our string test, for example, and print I. In this case, our loop will go through each character and print this character one by one. So you see T-E-S-T. It will also work with tuples. So for example, we will create a tuple. For example, we will store the fruits there, and we will store apple, banana, and for example, orange. And then we will create for loop for fruit in fruits. So we want to go through fruit, print fruit. And in the result, we have our for loop iterates over the tuple fruits. On each iteration, the variable fruit is set to the next item in the tuple, and the body of the loop is executed, which is, in this case, is the simple print statement that prints the value of fruit. You can also use tuple unpacking to unpack values into multiple variables. So, for example, let me change it. So, for example, we will add fruits data equal, then we will have list and the tuple here. we will have apple 3, 2. So for example, it's the price. Then we will have another, which is banana, and banana would cost for us in our example 3.5. And then we will have orange, and orange would cost 4.0. So it's strange prices, but for example, it's fine. And then we can use for fruit price. So we want to have a fruit and price in fruit data. Print f string, and we will write fruit costs, then price per kilogram, for example. And if we will run this loop, you will see that we unpacked it and we have that the apple cost 3.2 per kilogram, and etc. So as you can see, we are unpacking the tuple into two variables, one for fruit name and another one for the price, and then using these variables for printing. There is also an example for dictionaries. So for example, let me create some dictionary. Would be D equals to A1 B, B2 and C3, just like that. And then we can write the loop for key in D, print key D key. And let's run and see. So in this example, the for loops is iterating over the keys of the dictionary D. The print statement is using the key to look up the corresponding value in the dictionary and printing both the key and the value. Alternatively, we can use Python built-in function items for this. So we will write for key value in the items. Check the video about the dictionaries to know what it is. We will just print key and value. It looks more clear, and in the result we will have the same. We can also use values method to iterate over the values of just the values of the dictionary. So for example, we will use values, and now we will print just the values. So we don't need keys, we want to print just the values, which is 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at for loop that is more sophisticated than those we see before. A nested for loop is the for loop that is inside of another for loop. The inner for loop will run to completion for each iteration of the outer for loop. This can be useful when you need to iterate over multiple lists or other iterable objects at the same time. Here is an example of nested for loop that iterates over two lists of numbers and multiplies the corresponding elements together. So for example, let me create. So we have our list one, which would be 1, 2, 3, and then we have list 2, which would be 4, 5, 6. And then we will create the nested for loop. So we will write for x in list 1. Then we will write for I in list 2. So we iterate through both. And then we will print x to y. Y. In this example, the outer for loop is iterating over the elements of list 1, and for each iteration of the outer loop, the inner for loop iterates over the elements of list 2. The print statements is then called with the product of the current elements of list 1 and list 2. So let me see, we have the example. So in the first iteration, x equal to 1, y equal to 4, then next y to 5, y to 6, and this continues till it runs out of the elements in list 2. After that, the next value of x is taken. Let me just show you with the debugger, it would be easier to understand. So we have our first loop. So we have our x is 1. So and y is 4. Then we will print that 1 multiplied to 4. Then we not go back to this one. We go back to this one, as you can see. And we're changing our I from 4 to 5. And we will multiply it. And then to 6. And when we don't have any more elements in our list 2, we go back to our list 1 and this and change 2. Instead of 1, we will use 2. So you see that x is 2, and we go again through our y one by one until we reach them all. So I hope you got the idea how it works. You can play also with the debugger if you're not understanding something. It's a very good way to play with the debugger and understand how the code is moving through your code. It's important to keep in mind the numbers of iteration inner loops will take. If the both lists are large, then it could cause the program to take a long time to complete. Also be aware of what you want to do with this combination. Nested loops can also be used with dictionary, where you can iterate over the keys and values of a dictionary inside another loop. Nested loops are a powerful tool, but they can also make your code more complex and harder to read and understand. Be sure to use them only when they are necessary and use good naming convention to make it easy to understand the purpose of the code. There are also several built-in functions and techniques that can be used in combination with the loops to make your code more efficient and easier to read. That is all for today. I hope you got the idea behind the while and for loops. If you found this video useful, leave it a thumbs up and a comment. See you on the next video. Remember, knowledge is our superpower.